in this parable, I think that the best way to envision how this applies to us in our everyday life is that the question we should ask is, what is that debt, right? Like if we're the wicked servant in this case, what is the debt that we owe, and who is it that we owe it to? Well, in this parable, first we can understand that the person we owe it to is God Himself, and the debt. The way to think about the debt is this: is that you've been given existence, right? Like you have being and you exist, you breathe, you move, you live in the world. You've been given this thing we call life. And then the question is, this has been given to you, what have you done with it? Right? Have you produced anything beautiful? Anything good? Any return on the investment that God gave to you of existence? Right? And the reality is, when you think of it in this sense, right, that how could you possibly pay back God, right, for the gift of life, right? And so what this does is it renders each and every person with a 10,000 denarii debt, right? A debt, that, or rather, it was 10,000 talents. So, and that's even more. I mean, so this is like an enormous amount of money. It's like having a debt of like, $1 million and being like, well, there's no way I can ever repay this, especially with like if there's interest or something on it. What can I do? And that's the point. The point, one of the points is that you and I couldn't possibly, pay back God for this gift of life. And we have this on a smaller scale, when we think about what our parents had given us, right? I mean, this is partly why the commandment, to honor your parents is there, because, if you think and meditate on it for a bit, you consider, that you owe your existence in life, as weird and strange as it is, to another person, right? And that's been given to you, and then hopefully given you a good childhood too. Like, how can you pay that back, right? And so here's the point, is that you can't pay it back. So what's the only thing you can do, right? Pay it forward, right? That's the only option that you have in this scenario in life, is that to pay it forward. And then to realize that you've fallen short, right? Not only of somehow whatever that would look like to pay back for one's own existence, but you've also failed to just make good use of it too, right? And so with all of that in mind, right, God in His mercy, right, takes pity on us, just like it says in this parable, and forgives all that debt, right? Doesn't hold it against us in that way. Doesn't take back, right, that gift of life. And so when we're faced with that, we've not only have this debt we can't pay, but we've also been forgiven that debt already. So all of us, like from the start, right, already have a debt we could never have paid back, right? And it was forgiven. And so what does that make life and our existence but a exceedingly gratuitous gift, right? Like, so that is the attitude in the heart of forgiveness right there. Right? And this is what, I mean, because sometimes people do horrible stuff to us, and sometimes our hearts are very hard, and we find it very difficult to forgive people, right? Even when we want to or know we should, right? Sometimes unforgiveness is like some sort of like hook just lodged in our heart that we can't get out. And the best path forward to being able to be a forgiving person and to liberate ourselves from, resentment and the remembrance of wrongs that have happened to us is precisely to look at things from this perspective, to realize that it's all a gift that I could never give back. And so for me to not forgive other people, to not be merciful and patient with other people's weaknesses and sins and lack of virtue in their life, is to do exactly what this ridiculous wicked servant did, right? I mean, in part, this parable is painted this way for this character to be an absurd character in some way. But, it's not, look, but we can all identify with him too. We're all absurd and ridiculous like him, because life has so much misfortunes, and we're so weak in so many ways that it is very easy to harbor resentment and jealousies and bitterness and just self-pity, right? In a sense of like, woe is me for my life, right? There's so many opportunities to do that. And you can think of, like you can think of the Mother of God. I mean, we have her feast, and a great example is like, here's a woman, right? I mean, we often maybe don't think of all this, but who God interrupts her life and tells her she's going to be for something, she's going to be part of something really big. You know, maybe a lot of us would like God to do that to us, but I bet a lot of us too wouldn't like to have obligation and greatness thrust upon us either for the work and sacrifice that it entails, right? And so, and not only that, it's like you're going to have this great work and you're going to get pregnant out of wedlock, so you're going to be a teenage mother, and everyone is going to think you're a whore. Right? Like, that's what you get to do good. You're welcome. Right? And then you're gonna then see your son, who is gonna be the best human being that's ever lived, right? Who's also, not just that, also God. And then the world's going to turn on him, right? And treat him like he's a criminal or some great sinner, right? And then you get to hold the dead body of your Jesus in your hands after the cross, right? That's what the Mother of God gets. She gets all that, right? For this gift of life. And so there's a lot that she could have been, if she had a different attitude, resentful and bitter, right? To God for all of that, right? And yet she wasn't. That's astounding, right? And so one of the things that we have to be willing to do, right, with this heart of forgiveness is to not be judgmental towards other people, right? To also be willing to do what's good and right, to forgive and show love to other people, right? To show love to other people, even when it means the damage of our reputation, even when it means being misunderstood, and even when it means being mistreated for that. And so I have a very beautiful story from a life of Saint Vitaly from Gaza that I want to share with you that I think helps illustrate this also. This willingness to, in the face of the debt you can't pay and the debt that's been forgiven and the gift of life and the challenge to love in spite of all the hardships and misfortunes and disappointments that would come with it that might make us bitter, to love even when it means your reputation being tarnished. Saint Vitaly really shows us a wonderful example, I think, to encourage us. Saint Vitaly was a monk who lived in Gaza. Gaza is actually a very old Christian city, right? So it's kind of sad. It's just completely like laid waste now at this point. And he would spend his days working and laboring in hard physical labor. And then at night, he would take his money and he would go to a brothel and he would visit a woman and he'd pay to be with her, and then he would give her the night off. And he'd pray with her, right? And he'd help do things for her in the night and do work for her. And he did that every night. And he developed a horrible reputation of being, a philanderer, right? And he kept doing it without correcting anybody, without trying to defend himself, right? Without any bitterness or sort of resentment, like, poor is me, I'm doing something good, and look what the world does to me when I do something good, right? Like, that's what we all do, right? We whine like little babies, right? He doesn't. And then he gets confronted, paying for sex, right? But not really. And by other Christians, and they beat him and kill him, right? They beat him up because they're like, he's so terrible, how dare he do this, right? And then he's beaten up so badly he goes back to his cell and he dies, right? Then at the funeral, all the women show up, and they defend him and they tell his secret, and then everyone realizes that they hated, derided, and killed the most righteous man among them. This is a pattern throughout the lives of the saints, that holiness is hidden, right? It makes fools of our judgmentalness, right? Because of our lack of wisdom, because the obvious fact that we should all know, always know, is that we don't know the whole story, right? But we act like we do anyways. And this demonstrates that, right? That real love does not seek to be recognized or lauded or sort of put on a pedestal, right? That's not why like a mother loves, right? Unless she's a little psychopathic, right? Doesn't love her children so that she can be seen and praised by other people for doing it, right? That's not love. And so we're given this beautiful example of St. Vitalis of what it means to do the opposite of the wicked servant in the parable. That's what it looks like. That's what real holiness looks like. It's willing to be obscure. It's willing to sacrifice even one's own reputation, right, in order to love and do good. And many of these women who he helped eventually were able, inspired by him in his life, to get out of that way of living, to be able to find some other ways of supporting themselves, right, in the world, and were greatly blessed by that. And I'm sure also were the people who were humbled and embarrassed by their judgmentalness and their violence towards a holy brother of theirs as well. And so this is something to remind us and to strengthen us that St. Vitalis did this, the Mother of God did this too, and we can do it as well, because it's a supremely better way to live with a sense of dependency on God, of gratitude for him. And what that does is it frees you. It frees you to actually love people well when you recognize your own debt and your own gift, and then you pay it forward. Glory to Jesus Christ.